Hey, what's up guys, this is Oakley, and I'm going to be playing a 1v1 online multiplayer battle. My opponent is going to be Darth Pierce of Epirus, and he is going to be fielding Carthage. I myself am going to be playing as Cimmeria. They are going to be one of the Black Seas Culture Pact factions that you can play as. So my build is going to be having two of these step archers paired up with two of the step lancers. So I've sent, a combination of each on either flank, pushing up the sides just to see where my opponent is at with the hill. I couldn't quite see where he was, and he's going to have a little bit of the hill advantage, so I was a little wary of what was happening, so at least I get some early scouting. And here you can see his force, but let's go over mine real quick. So on the left flank I have two of my Cimmerian heavy archers backed up by two Scythian hoplites. There's some pretty cool units actually. But the problem with these heavy archers is they don't quite have the stats of heavy archers, whereas they thought they would. They didn't actually have heavy shot, so I'm hoping those guys get patched and beefed up a little bit. And then I have some basic step archers in the front. You can see them positioned here. And then behind this I have some step spearmen, really cheap units. You can see these guys will melt away. They'll probably even be beaten by Parthian spearmen. But yeah, those guys are just fodder in the front. And then I have three of these hoplites in the front, two pick peltas, and then Cimmerian noble infantry in the rear. These guys are definitely going to save my life in this battle, just because of the tenacity they have, the resolve they have, and their morale effects. And so now you can see him chasing away both of my flanks. I'm trying to pull him into the shot of my heavy bowman on this flank. Was able to pull him into range, and hopefully I'll be able to get a couple shots off against his men. Yep, looks like a couple of my bowmen were able to get some shots, but he skirts off into the distance before he takes too much fire. But that's when I'm going to move back in with both of these forces, toy and play with him. And over here I'm moving over another force to try and support my horses on the back. I realize he has too much of a hill advantage, so I'm going to pull my forces back into the retreat and try and really pick off his cav on this flank and try and delay an engagement on all other flanks. That's exactly what you have to do. If you know you're going to have to micro a lot, then make sure you just send sweeping orders to the rest of your army to just disengage. Don't risk that fight, and conserve your micro. So for instance here I'm having some of my archers positioned to counter his archers on that flank, and the rest of my archers are going to be shooting at his cavalry. They're going to scoot out, but the rest of my guys are going to get some early shots, flanking shots into his slingers. So he's paying for his attempt to try and chase after the bulk of my army. I'm returning fire, and I also have some of my own horse archers coming in from the side, so I'm making him pay pretty dearly, but he's going to be pushing up with the rest of his force. His cavalry are going to come back in, and I'm going to decide to make him pay for exposing all of these skirmishers up in the front. So look at these peltas, balearics. The problem with charging peltas is actually they are very strong in these types of engagements, and it'll take a pretty heavy cavalry charge to knock him out. I was able to take out one of his balearics, and I charged in on these peltas, but you can see that charge did almost nothing, and by waiting in for this opportunity, you can see how I'm exposing myself to more charges from his infantry. All his units turning around. These peltas especially gonna tear my guys apart, so I should really try disengaging. I am. And I have my own step spearman here trying to hold his forces back, absorb some fire, and then get some more shots from my own guys. I was able to intercept some of his forces, his Skitarii cav, on my young axes. Again, a fodder unit just to intercept his cav. And I'm going to continue to pull back my forces and now move up my hoplites to guard my archers, who he seems to be going after with a perseverance that kind of scared me. And you can see him pushing forward on all flanks. And this charge, Peltas, I only killed 20 of his guys, and I paid for it with almost the entirety of my Lancer force. So you can see just how the latest patch is working, and he's actually going to be able to charge all the way through into my step archers and keep pushing on forward. He's going to go after my step archers here. My step horse archers, excuse me. So he's actually getting some good counterattacks up through here, really exploiting my lack of mobility at this point. I was too stationary. I should have pulled up more, and he's just going to be using these swarming tactics. And so I was a little bit too opportunistic and greedy in pushing the center, and he counteracted beautifully. And now he's going to be charging in with all his heavy cav, just charging after my cavalry, trying to knock them out. And you can see my guys are not very good. Surprisingly, the Cimmerian troops have really crappy cavalry, and so you can see step lances are really cheap, and they're going to be biting the dust. My horse archers are not able to get too many kills. I tried to bait with them a lot, and they only got 24 kills, some of that on the charge. I still have some more full health step lancers, so I'm going to try and neutralize his cav, but he has more and more, so I'm quickly losing my ability to counter him in the cavalry department. He has thrown away a fair amount of his Campanians and other troops right into hoplites and other forces, so I'm making him pay for that, but he has just more cav than I can handle, and the rest of his forces are sitting idle, and you can see him here targeting my step spearmen, who are going to break almost instantaneously, but at least they're distracting all his archers. Over here, some of my own young axes are not going to hold up too well against the Scutari cav, and with the companions in their back, they're going to break. But I am kind of on crisis management right here. I have to get his cavalry away from me and try and reform into this blob and not get too many of my guys isolated, which is exactly what's happening here. You can see his archers, his cavalry scooting around trying to get my archers. I'm trying my best to, run away from these heavy pikes coming down the hill, putting pressure on me, as well as scooting away from his cav. I don't have enough to support me here, so I'm going to pull back with these guys, charge forward with some of my step lancers to try and force him back on this front. And over here, crisis management, like I said, you have to sometimes abandon some of your forces, and that's disappointingly going to have to happen to my young axes. The rest of my step spearmen are here, sacrificing themselves into this battle to hold up the enemy, and I'm going to have to pull back. I'm trying to get as much fire as I can with my peltas and other forces against some of these infantry who are pushing up, and it's doing a fair amount of damage. My opponent is really losing a good amount of men, so I think I'm stemming the frontal assault pretty well, and I'll be able to pull these guys back behind some of my hoplite walls, although I am taking some fire. Over here you can see me dancing my Cimmerian heavy archers around, away from the cav, away from the infantry, and they're just going to be chasing me remorselessly. But see how I did this? I pulled one hoplite back, he stands still, allows for the rest of my troops to fall back. You have to do a really staggered retreat, and then I'm pulling back two of these units to try and create a defensive screen around, and I have even some horse archers to try and keep him back. And if these guys had not sacrificed themselves, the step lancers, into this mix, he could have just gone through here and obliterated both of my flanks. So you really have to sacrifice some of your units. And for instance, concentrate your missile fire on individual units. Send all of your fire on one of them to absolutely obliterate them instantly, like you could see it happening to that unit. But again, as I said, I sacrificed the cavalry advantage. He is now going to be crashing around my wings, and now he's going to be coming in through the center. So let's actually look at this from a tactical perspective. That makes it a little bit clear what's happening. You can see he's totally enveloping me on all flanks, and I have to shuffle everything I can, send spearmen to the back, try and guard my archers, and it's becoming really, really hard. I have to blunt this assault on the side, but those are pikemen, and those can chew through hoplites, so I have to be very wary about where I dedicate my forces. So his pikemen were pushing forward, and now they're going to go ahead and drop their spears, and that's going to be very dangerous for me. My opponent moved them up very brilliantly to point blank range, and he's going to drop his spears. That's how you use pikes effectively. And then over back here, because he has cavalry in the back, I have to send all of these noble infantry other units in the rear of my forces, and I have nothing left to defend the front, so that's going to be very deadly for me. But I am going to concentrate fire with my archers, selecting on the nearest unit that seems to have its flank exposed, and you can see some of the early damage I am getting off against them. Had these units had heavy shot, I probably would have been able to kill a lot more forces. And in the front, I am starting to try and brace for this assault coming in at me. It's very scary. All I can do is pull back. Because look at this, his cavalry is going to be trying to charge at least into the back of this force, threatening the rear, and so I'm getting confronted on all sides. I detached some of my Scythian hoplite, pulled them on the side, and tried to get most of the force on the flank of this pike unit, so I can hold back 2 units there. And in the front, he has so many guys bearing down on me. These hoplites are going to have to be brave, they're going to have to be noble, and they're going to have to hold this charge. But with the heavy armor, look at this, they took a full volley, and let's see how many kills. Yep, I lost 1 unit. So that's the strength of having these factions like Cimmeria, which have the Hellenic forces. They can take a huge beating and hold up to these assaults. But again, I'm forced to sacrifice some units on the extremities to hold back Italian swordsmen, to hold back Gallic warriors. So I'm getting like my extremities chewed apart. His cav are going to be picking and choosing certain units they want to collapse on and kill. So just precision slicing up of my force. Over here, I'm forced to abandon another hoplite unit, and he's going to get around the back of my guys. He can potentially charge in the side, and that's what he's going to be doing with his Libyans. It's very, very troublesome for me, but what I've been able to do at least is consolidate my archers, and I'm going to pay, look at this, 5 skirmishing units. I'm going to make him pay for exposing his flank like that, and because his cav went ahead and scooted all the way over here, I can, free up this rear, move up some hoplites here to guard this flank. Over here, we're doing okay, holding up decently, but let's go ahead and watch as I deliver a devastating blow to the side of these guys. And this is exactly how you have to deal with this infantry, not infantry span, but infantry heavy builds, is really be able to concentrate fire on them and punish them for exposing their flanks. You can see this is just 1 volley, and this would have taken, a high tier sword unit. This would have taken them probably like 20-30 seconds to do, and I've been able to get the same number of kills in a much shorter amount of time with concentrated archer fire. So if you can use your archers effectively, they can do as much as a heavy elite infantry, but you just got to make sure you protect them. Yeah, like I said, my extremities are being chewed apart. We could put this on play. and now he's going to be running around and doing these precision strikes on the extremities of my forces. Pikemen moving into a better position. They're going to be chewing into my guys, and I'm really scared, especially as these peltasts are moving in. These guys are the ones who can really chew into my own hoplites. More charges coming into my flank. At least my archers are going to be, targeting these cavalry. So I will be cleaning these guys up now that they're in range. You see them starting to drop. And now his peltasts are going to be targeting my own hoplites. As I said, they can take a beating, but not very prolonged beating, especially against 2 peltasts. I really have to do something about that. So my archers are going to be trying to return fire on them. I'm going to engage them in melee. And I have more guys over here. My opponent has realized that he really needs to silence this entire group of archers. And so I'm going to be moving Cimmerian noble infantry around, almost keeping pace with his cavalry. You can see as he's trying to skirt around and get to the rear of my forces. This has ended up being a very strategic, fun battle, a battle of maneuver. And now I have to shuffle around all of my guys, try and get them out of position. Even if he isn't able to kill my archers, he's preventing them from shooting and attacking most of the time. However, because I had 2 blobs, I was able to reposition one of them over here. And that's something you want to do. You can't have all of your forces retreating. Have some of them turn around and deliver pretty devastating blows to your opponent. But here he's going to go ahead and knock out another of my weakened forces. So I'm left with less and less guys. And he has more and more troops who are going to get committed. At least I was able to get these hoplites. Scythian hoplites are pretty freaking good. I really like them into the mix here. But with peltasts are actually pretty good sword units. So it's going to take me a while to finish this off. And take a look at the rear of my forces. That's something he can exploit with his cavalry. And I'm not quite able to get back in time. You can see my noble infantry trying to charge after them and stop them, but they're going to be killing my guys. The only advantage I can draw from this is by getting him into range of my peltasts and archers and try and punish these guys for being in here. And you can see the volleys of, all that stuff. I'm finally able to silence his cav, pin them, and finish them off with my main blob of units here. But he still has some guys who can threaten the rear, and they're going to be going in for a juicy strike right into my guys. What I'm going to do is actually redeploy my picked peltasts. My peltasts I know can handle this type of engagement, so I'm going to put them in the center. Unfortunately, some of the step archers do take that assault, but my peltasts are going to be getting back into this. He charges from that side, but at least I have my Cimmerian noble infantry, and this charge is relatively blunted because I kept my picked peltasts on one side, and on the other side they're going to charge into this. But look at this, he's collapsing on all sides with his forces. This is going to be very deadly. I was able to scoot out with one of my Cimmerian heavy archers, and they're going to be helping this fight, shooting up the pikemen from the side who would otherwise be able to collapse on me. But look at this, at this point, I'm completely surrounded, have more guys on the flank. At least I have been able to salvage some archer units, and they're going to be doing their best to clean up some forces. My own hoplites here are not going to hold out for long. And in the center here is where it's going to be a very crucial fight. I'm pinned on one side with a bunch of these units here, cavalry on both flanks, so it's up to my peltasts to hold the rear. But the advantage of having these, I think they're picked peltasts? Yep. And with veterancy that I gave them, these guys are going to hold out pretty well in melee, and so that is actually what's going to turn the tide on this side, at least in the cavalry department. I charged back in with some of my Cimmerian heavy infantry. With their morale boosts and their bonuses, I was able to shatter both of those flanks. So that was a godsend. So it just goes to show some of the elite units that you can pick from this faction, definitely proving their worth, especially in the late game. And having this extra archer unit that was able to extradite from that engagement just won me this flank by shooting up the rear of those pikemen. I was able to get the equivalent of having a cavalry unit in the rear of the pikemen. I didn't quite hammer and anvil them, but I hammer and anvil them with arrows, so to speak. And now look at this. I'm going to give them more volleys right into the face of those cavalry units, but they're still going to deliver a devastating blow. But here come the rest. Oops, what am I doing? Okay, here come the rest of my forces charging into this, and so now I'm able to, pin his cavalry. They're trying to get away desperately, but I'm able to clean that up, and now I'm able to clean up the extremities of the force. Some of my own hoplites are going to be charging double speed into his archers. I've cleaned up the rest of the engagement. Thankfully, I think it was due to the fact that I killed his general somewhere in this engagement when he engaged with all his cavalry, and that's what allowed me to turn the tide. My picked peltasts are holding up beautifully. 185 kills, that's crazy. 187. These guys, I would say, are definitely worth their cost. Their armor penetration that they get from their javelins are incredible, and then they can hold up in fights against Libyan infantry who are winded at this point. Yep, general dead, so you can see that's what's turning the morale against my opponent. And finally, I'm able to shatter my opponent's army, even though I was a little bit caught off guard with that initial charge that he had down the hill. My mismanagement of the cavalry. But again, it's hard to do that with this faction. I was figuring Cimmeria would have a little bit more of the step faction influence and have better cavalry units, but they really have pretty shit guys who can't really hold up to anything but skirmishing. So I lost them, and I was forced to rely on some of the more Hellenic backup of this army. The Cimmerian noble infantry, definitely awesome troops, performing very well. Look at their shields, that looks so cool. But yeah, I think the staple of this force was the Hellenic backbone of it, which is unfortunate because then I might as well be playing with Athens or some other force which has, you know, its own decent cavalry that could probably beat this cavalry. So I think Cimmeria definitely needs a little more punch to it in the cavalry department. You can see the forces I had to deploy. That's it for cavalry that you can have. But yeah, my peltas, pig peltas, those are a nice and welcome addition. But here are the really cheap troops that I had to use as fodder, absorbing a lot of the enemy peltas fire. They're really cheap. They're like 120 denarii, 100 or 200 denarii, something really cheap, so it didn't quite matter. Scythian hoplites are pretty cheap as well, but here you can see my Cimmerian noble infantry. I'm glad I brought 3 of them. Definitely very good troops, and even though my heavy archers did not quite have the heavy shot I wanted them to do, you can see just the number of kills that all my skirmishers got, more than like the infantry did over here. But great game to my opponent. I hope to play more of these, and I do have a couple more of our replays in store. So see you guys next time. Thanks so much.